this is a hot topic for many farmers, many accountants. And Bob had asked me if I had any slides to share, and I'll be flat out honest. Um, we've been working around the clock to get these done for everybody. So I'm just going to go off of my brain and what I've been told. So bear with me. I'm happy to answer questions. I know there's not a ton of people on, but I know there's a lot of questions around this PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. So happy to answer any questions if you haven't applied for it yet or if you would qualify. So again, I'm Summer Long with First Financial Bank, and we are one of the banks out of many that are participating in helping our small businesses, our farmers, our ranchers apply for this program that's with the government. So um, on December 27th, former President Trump signed the Consolidated Appropriations Act into place, and that enacted the second draw for the PPP program. Um, a lot of people applied for the first round that started back in March and April, basically when the pandemic started. And then that one closed up, and then there was another. This second round just started opening up here in the last week. So if you there's a couple things. So there's a first draw and there's a second draw. They have both been within this act. They both now have more funds available. So if you as a farmer, a Schedule F farmer, you as a corporation farming entity, you as an LLC farming entity, or any business that you have did not get in on that first draw, you too are eligible for that first draw this round. And then the second draw is available if you have the 25% revenue decrease in one given quarter. So I'll go through that in a little bit more. So let's go through the first draw. If you were able to get in on that first one, again, that is open back up. You can apply with any financial banking institution that is taking applications to get those submitted to the SBA. Farmers now qualify differently this round for that first draw than they did in the original draw. So if you are a Schedule F farmer, you have a Schedule F as in Frank on your 1040 schedule tax return, you will now qualify based off of your gross revenues up to $100,000. So if that line 9 on your Schedule F 1040 is $100,000 or more, you would qualify for at least $20,800 based on that line 9 if it's $100,000 or more. If it's less than $100,000, you'll take that number, line 9, off of your Schedule F, take that, divide it by 12 to come up with a monthly average, and then multiply that by 2.5. That would be how much you would qualify based on a Schedule F farmer. If you have labor or employees, or you're a small business that's not farming, you too would qualify based on your LLC, and you would do that based off of your payroll information for 2019 or 2020. So you have the option there. So that is if you didn't apply for round 1 on that. That's kind of the basics on what you would do to apply. For round 2, it's a little bit different. To get that draw 2 money, you have to have at least a 25% decrease in revenue from quarter to quarter on any given quarter compared to 2019, compared to 2020 numbers. That is one of the biggest qualifications for the draw 2 of the PPP, is that 25% decrease in gross receipts. So it's based off of gross receipts, gross sales compared to 2019, compared to 2020. There are some other requirements, such as you have to have 300 employees or less. You have to use the funds appropriately, that kind of things. But the biggest one that's going to qualify for most of us here is that you have to have the 25% decrease in gross receipts for one given quarter, 2020 compared to 2019. So that's for draw 2. if you've already done draw one, you would have to have a 25% decrease in gross receipts. If you have not done one, then you'd want to do round one right now first. Gross receipts is how, the SBA is calculating those, is all of your revenue. So all of your sales, your interest, your rents, your royalties, your fees, your commissions, all of that stuff is calculated into gross receipts, including government payments for farmers. So that definitely counts when you're figuring farmer income for gross. And I know a lot of people in this area had a better 2020, but definitely take the time to go through it calendar quarter to quarter to make sure that you didn't have that 25% decrease, because depending on quarter of different things, you could potentially qualify and not realize that you might. Some other things, as far as forgiveness goes, so these loans per se are money that you receive, and then after you use it, which you have 8 to 24 weeks to use the funds appropriately, and I'll go over what that means in a second. After that 8 to 24 weeks, however long it takes you, that's your choice. You have to ask for forgiveness from the SBA, the Small Business Association, to get that loan forgiven. If you use it for the appropriate ways, the ways that they're intending for you to use, and you submit all of the documentation for that forgiveness, then you that will wipe away and it will no longer be a loan. It'll just be forgiven, and you won't have to pay that back. So going into the forgiveness side, again, you have 8 to 24 weeks to use the money. That's on draw one or draw two. It doesn't matter which one we're referring to here. And you are eligible for both if the timing works out for you. So as far as what you can use that money on to make sure that you come back and it is forgiven and gets wiped away, because that's the intent, is that you want to use it the way that the SBA is wanting you to. That way you don't have to pay it back. So some of the things that you can use it for, 60% of it is required to be used for payroll purposes. That can, if you are a sole proprietor, the payroll that you pay is yourself. If it's just you and you're a Schedule F, that would be yourself, is who you would pay that 60% of payroll to. If you have employees, if you're an LLC, a corporation, a partnership, something of that, of course, you would actually have W-2 employees that you would pay labor to. So 60% of that money that you receive is required to be used for payroll. Again, you'll have to document that on the backside of your 8 to 24 weeks. So make sure that you keep copies of your pay stubs, just your payroll documents, QuickBooks, whatever you use, depending on the size of your farming operation or the size of your business would depend on what documentation you have for that. So 60% for payroll, at least. The other 40% can be used for a list of things such as mortgage interest, so just the interest part, rent, utility payments. There are several others, covered worker protection expenditures. Those are more COVID related. There's some detail in that. If that's something that applies to you, I would recommend that you get with your banker to get that definition a little bit more. Covered supplier cost, covered operation expenditures, and the itemization from the SBA at this point on that is more software based, cloud computing, HR, accounting type stuff. So most likely in just farming operations, not something that you would use. Covered property damage costs, anything associated during the pandemic type thing. Those are what you have to use. So again, the 40% can go towards mortgage interest, rent, utility payments are probably the ones that would be most applicable for most of us. So again, 60% for payroll. If you are a sole proprietor, that 60% can go to yourself. You can always use more for payroll. So if you do have several employees, that you could use more than 60% of it for payroll to maintain your employees. Of course, you can use more for payroll, but at least 60% is required to be for payroll. And then the other 40% can be used for those other things. Again, you do have to ask for forgiveness. So you will have to apply for forgiveness with the institution that you apply for the money. You will have to go back at the end of your 8 to 24 weeks and apply for forgiveness on that. So make sure you're keeping good documentation of that. You'll submit that, and then the SBA will review it. Your financial institution will send that directly to the SBA. They will review it, and it's up to the SBA for them to forgive it. Once they do that, then that will wipe away the loan, and it'll be forgiven, and you won't have to pay it back. If for whatever reason you don't get it all forgiven, it is a 1% loan that you will have to repay over a 5-year period. So if you aren't able to use all of the funds for the correct reasons, that loan will go into place, and you will have to make those payments over a 5-year period at a 1% rate. So that talks about the forgiveness piece of it. I'm going to go a little bit over the EIDL advances that many people and small businesses received on the first draw of the PPP money. So EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, that was a loan that was directly done with the SBA, and they gave advances up to $10,000 depending on your employee count. If you received one of those in the act that was signed December, will be forgiven. However, that money has to come from the SBA and go back to your financial institution that you used, and then that money will be reimbursed to you once the SBA does the procedures to get that back to your financial institution. That's a lot of information, and I know it's a ton of information, and most people have had lots and lots of questions on it. That was only a 15-minute, and I know that Bob told me to go 30 minutes, so I'm happy if there's discussion on this. I would be happy to take anybody's questions on specific things or how it works. But I know that there are several financial institutions in the area that definitely are taking applications. So I do encourage you to make sure that you do apply. If you are a Schedule F, as in Frank, on your 1040, look at your line 9 to see how much you would qualify for. And then if you are an LLC, a corporation, a partnership, something other than a sole proprietor, you can apply based on your payroll for the year is how you would calculate how much you can apply for. So that line 9, sole proprietor, Schedule F, is the big number that we're looking at for the first draw of the PPP if you didn't do it the first time around back in March. Again, to do the second draw, you have to have a 25% decrease in gross receipts for a given quarter from compared to 2019 to 2020. You had to have a decrease in 25% of gross receipts. Are there any questions that anybody would like to unmute and ask?
Yeah, feel free to unmute, guys, or you can put questions in the chat.
Bob, have you had any questions related to this topic in the office that maybe I could dig a little deeper into a specific part of it?
Actually, yes, and I was about to ask you this one. I have gotten a question quite a bit. With the installation of the most recent administration, do you expect these rules to change?
You know what? I do expect us to get some clarification. So I was on a national SBA conference call yesterday, in fact, and there is a lot of up in the air with Schedule F farmers and ranchers across the country, and we are supposed to get more information, more clarification for farmers later next week. So I would definitely say stay tuned. There's definitely some parts of it that I didn't go into a lot of detail that I don't agree with, and that um, most farming lenders, most people that have a good understanding of it may not agree with. But it's not. So I think that there'll be more clarification to help those things that maybe we don't agree with come out later next week, it sounds like. But I don't think that the rules per se will change. They might just open up a little bit more in favor of farmers. Um, but we don't know that at this point. We haven't received anything, but is supposed to be more clarification next week um, to maybe help out.
Okay. Well, I heard you mention as well that there is when you do the repayment, you have a 1% interest rate on the repayment plan. Do you know
Mhm.
if that's locked in?
It is locked in. So if you do not get forgiveness, if you do not get the full forgiveness, which I'll be honest, we haven't had a lot not get the full forgiveness on the first round. So hopefully you're able to get the full forgiveness and you won't have to pay it back. But if for whatever reason you do not spend the full amount that you have received, um, yes, it is a 1% fixed rate over that 5 years. So you would just have to pay whatever is not forgiven. So it would be prorated to whatever piece of it you did not document, and it would be fixed for 1% over that 5 years to pay it back.
Okay, so if I were a farmer who is making considerations towards this, what would you say is the smartest thing to prepare as I get ready to go and apply for this?
So if you are a Schedule F sole proprietor, the biggest thing that you'll need is that copy of your Schedule F in your tax return. So you should only need that document if you're applying for um, draw one um, of it. If you are a corporation, an LLC, or something like that, and you're applying for draw one, you will need payroll information to prove what your monthly payroll is. If you are applying for draw two and you've already received draw one, you can use the same payroll information, the same Schedule F, the same Schedule C, whatever applies to you, as you did the first round. So you won't necessarily need that documentation, as your financial institution probably already has that documentation. However, you will need to have at least proof and have calculated what your 2019 quarter and your 2020 quarter that you're going to use to prove that 25% decrease in gross receipts. So you'll need to know those numbers, and you'll need to know what percentage it is and what quarter you're going to use. Most um, farmers can be all over the place as far as quarters, because it will depend on based on grain sales, if you're a grain farmer. For restaurants, small business restaurants, a lot of them it's quarter two, because that's when the pandemic really started in 2020, and that's when we were completely shut down and they had no income. So a lot of small businesses that were completely shut down, it's pretty easy to calculate quarter two of 2020 was a lot less than 2019's quarter two. So you do need to have those numbers in hand when you go to apply. I will say a lot of financial institutions, the application is electronic because they also have to submit it to the SBA. I know ours is an electronic application that you would just get on at your house, plug and chug in the informations. It's a lot like TurboTax. You plug in what they say, you hit submit, somebody at the bank will review it and submit it on to the SBA. I'm not as familiar with the procedures at other financial institutions, but I do know most of them are electronic, not something that you need to go in and take a paper application in for. So hopefully that answered your question in excess.
That is just fine. That is absolutely fine. All right, so it doesn't look like we have any other questions for Summer, but I will add that this is being recorded, so you will be able to review this. I'll make sure to send out a link to everyone after our program. So, Summer, thank you very much for your time and everything you just shared with us. And of course, if you want to share your contact information, just let me know. And with that, I guess we'll go ahead and pass it on to Megan Mollett from the Farm Service Agency in Brazil, Indiana. Megan, would you like to start us off?
Let's see if I can get unmuted. Okay, can you hear me, Bob?
Yep, you were coming through.
All right, perfect. I want to make sure I wasn't talking to myself. I do that enough already. So my name's Megan Mollett. I am the County Executive Director for the Farm Service Agency in Brazil. And first of all, just want to thanks, Bob, for letting me come on and talk a little bit about some of the programs we've got going on. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my slides to go over. And let me get that started, and hopefully, let's see here. Try to share my screen with you guys. Let's see here. Okay. Bob, can you let me know if you can see my screen now?
Absolutely. You're coming through bright and clear.
All right, perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to go over a few of the programs that we're working on right now. Some of them are fairly new, and then some of them are some that we do every year. I'll try to pause a little bit between each slide just in case there's a question. And you can type your questions into the chat and I can go back over those. I can always go back to a slide if you need to see something different. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the Quality Loss Adjustment Program, our CFAP application period that's going on right now, the ARC PLC sign up for 2021, and our CRP sign up for 2021 that's going on right now. So I'll just get started on our Quality Loss Adjustment Program. This just came out not very long ago. Our sign up period started January 6th and it's running through March 5th. It's new and I haven't had anybody apply yet, but these are the rules that I'm being given so far. If anybody is interested in applying, we can always take a look and see if it will work for you or not. So to be eligible, you must have had a crop that was eligible for federal crop insurance or NAP insurance. And the loss that you had in your crop had to have taken place in a county with a qualifying disaster declaration. So what this program is covering, Clay County was declared a disaster county in 2019 through the secretarial designation. And the disaster that we were covered for was for excessive moisture. So this program is also helping with that disaster. The crops that you had to have suffered from the excessive moisture, which would be our qualifying loss. And it must have had the quality loss discount of 5% or greater due to the excessive moisture. So that would be something that you would have seen if you took your grain to be sold at the elevator, and then on your settlement sheets you had a dock or you had a discount due to that disaster event. Now it is only going to be eligible for those specific issues, so it's only going to be for excessive moisture. So if it was a management issue or some other cause of loss, it would not apply for this program. And then if this is something that you think you may be eligible for, as a producer, you would supply documentation that would show that you had that discount. So that would be your settlement sheets, sales receipts, written sales contract, whatever documentation that you had, and it would have to be verifiable. And then one other catch with this program is the grading for the quality loss must have been done 30 days from harvest. So this couldn't have been old grain that had been sitting in the bin for a long period of time that you just recently sold. It would have had to have come out of the field and then been checked for this quality issue within 30 days of harvest. One way to kind of take a look at this program a little bit more deeply, we do have a really great website that's been set up, which is farmers.gov. And that would be farmers.gov/quality loss for more information. So you could go to that website and get some more information on that. And then if, again, you could always get a hold of us at the office and we could take a look at your settlement sheets and see if it would be something that would be eligible. Okay. I had some slides prepared and I was going to go over our CFAP, which is the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. There's some additional assistance that was coming out, but right now this is under review by the incoming administration, and they're asking us to kind of hold off on doing a whole lot of outreach on this. So I'm just going to kind of say that all of the FSA offices right now are taking revisions to the previously filed applications if you qualify. That is for the CFAP 2. There are a couple things that have been added to that program. And then the deadline to submit a revised application is February 26th. There is more information about this again at farmers.gov. In this case, it would be farmers.gov/CFAP. There's a lot of different rules and regulations on this program, so feel free to get a hold of us if you have any questions on that. Okay. So our main program that we sign up for every year is going to be the 2021 ARC PLC. You may remember from the last sign up that we had for 2019 and 2020 that you had to make an election for the program. And you could choose ARC County, PLC, or ARC Individual. And at that time, you made the election and you were locked in for 2 years. So now that we're into 2021, this ARC PLC sign up is allowing you to switch those programs around. So if there's one that you would prefer to have for 2021, you can make those changes. The deadline to make any adjustments to those contracts is going to be March 15th. This is also the deadline if you need to make any other adjustments to the way that you're farming. So if you changed landowners, if you picked up new acreage that you're farming, if you've switched from cash rent to shares or the other, or back or forth to how you're farming, we would need to know that in advance so that we can make adjustments to your contract, and that way we could get all signatures by March 15th. Now, I know that making a decision on whether you're going to do the ARC County, PLC, or the other ARC that we have to offer, there's been some presentations, I think, from some crop insurance companies, but there are some tools that you can use on your own to kind of make a decision on what you want to do. I know that Illinois has one that's really good. I put a link to that on this particular slide. If that is something that you'd like to go straight to that calculator, our farmers.gov/ARC-PLC has the other calculators that are available. And you can actually go to that site. It tells you all about the different programs and what they mean. So under our 2018 Farm Bill, that's when they came up with these programs. So the ARC County is going to be payment based on the county revenue. The ARC IC is going to be payment based on the individual farm revenue, and the PLC is going to be payment based on the market year average. And then there's a bunch of different calculations that go into making these payments. But like I said, these calculators here at this website, when you go into those, you can plug in your own numbers and kind of make a decision on what you want to do. So the next thing I'm going to talk about a little bit is our general sign up for CRP. We can sign up for the continuous CRP program throughout the year, but our general CRP sign up is only through a certain window of time. So in this case, with our general that just started our sign up 56, this is running from January 4th to February 12th. So this is a program that you can get into for, you can put in approved grasses, trees, shrubs. They are going to help control soil erosion. It can improve water quality and also creates a wildlife habitat. And by doing that, you take your ground out of cropland, putting it into these programs in exchange for an annual rental payment. I did some checking for our general sign up, and our average soil rental rate right now for Clay County is around $136. Now this varies based on your soil types. So if this is a program that you think you're interested in, you can contact the office and we will run a scenario for you to give you an idea of what your annual payment will be per acre, and it will be based off of your soil types on your farm. And then I'll just go over a couple of options for what your eligibility would be to qualify. So you had to have been a producer that either owned or operated the land for at least 12 months prior to the end of the enrollment period, which again is February 12th. The land must be cropland. So it had to have been at least planted 4 of the 6 crop years between 2012 and 2017 to an agricultural commodity. And you only had to have it planted for those 6 years. Also, if you have expiring CRP that you already had enrolled, it would be eligible to be re-enrolled into this general program as well. And then down at the bottom of the slide, it kind of talks a little bit about some more eligibility. For some areas outside of county, you have to have a weighted average erosion index of 8 or higher to be considered eligible for the general. Fortunately for Clay County, we are actually located in a state priority zone, the wildlife quality zone, water quality zone, and the Henslow Sparrow Wildlife Enhancement Area. So the majority of all of the Clay County acres in our area would be eligible to apply to begin with. So that works out pretty well for us there. And then I just kind of want to remind, I know some people have already been participating in the CRP program before, but anyone that would be new to this is actually a 10-year contract that you sign up for. And it is going to be maintained by you as the producer or the landowner for that 10 years. So it does have to be maintained and taken care of. And then there is also cost share that's available to install this. So not only are you going to get your annual rental payment to put this acreage into CRP, but you also get cost share to help you get it installed. There is some new improvements that have came out for our options for signing documents in our office. Pretty excited to be able to offer this now. Our FSA and NRCS are now going to have access to OneSpan and Box. And this is going to allow producers to e-sign a lot of their documents either on their computer or on their smartphones. It lets you digitally sign things like contracts and forms straight through the email. You're not going to have to print everything out, scan it, or fax it back. It's just basically we send you an email with your document and it's a click and sign option. And we've only been using it for about a month, but it has been very quick and very easy, and everyone's been able to use it really well. So I'm pretty excited to be able to offer that. So if you're needing to sign something and we haven't offered that service to you, just see if we can send it to you that way. There's more information on our farmers.gov site, of course. I believe they've got it set up where you can actually create an account where you can store the documents that you signed. That's not required to use this. It is an option for you if it sounds like something you'd like to do. There's only a couple forms that we aren't able to do this way. One of those is our CCC 941 AGI. That one we can't do that for because it's an IRS form and they won't accept the e-signature. And then the other one that we cannot do that for would be the FSA 211, which is our power of attorney form. That's actually required to be witnessed by either an FSA employee or a notary. So the e-sign doesn't work for those. But for all our other forms, we've been able to use it and it's been very helpful. One thing I'm wanting to majorly encourage this year, I don't know if everyone's noticed, but the FSA office has come up with multiple programs over this year, several of them that we've never seen before. And getting the word out to everyone is really important. And I just wanted to bring up that we do have this GovDelivery option if you're not already signed up. It is for emails and text messages. It helps me to get this information to you quickly, to notify you of any deadlines that are coming up, or new programs that may open up, or even presentations like what we're doing today. This is actually how I can kind of help you get in contact with us and let us know what's going on in the office, or let you know what's going on in the office with us. So you can sign up for either an email with a bulletin or text messaging. And you would just, if you wanted to do that, you would text IN Clay to FSA Now, which is the 372-669 number. And it's just those numbers, and you just text that IN Clay, and you would be signed up to get our text messages from the office. And I will say that we only send generally 1 or 2 of those a month, so we wouldn't be bogging down your phone or your emails. I've just got our Clay County office number here. Like I say, on any of these programs, if you think that you may qualify or you're eligible for any of those, you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to give us a call. And that's really all I have. I'm here for questions if anyone has any.
Okay, just like always, if you guys have questions, go ahead and use your microphone or put them in the chat. Okay, I am not seeing any questions. So, guys, just feel free if you have any, if you think of any after this, email them to me, email them to Megan. We would be more than happy to answer them. And thank you very much, Megan, for helping us out this evening and giving us all that information about all those great programs.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay, so up next we have a fellow extension educator, Shannon Chipman, who is going to be talking to you guys about how to handle some of these rough times. One of the things that we need to consider a lot nowadays is how our mental health is doing amidst all this stress. Those of us who work in agriculture, we kind of have a stiff neck and we don't like to admit that there may be something wrong, but we got to do some self-care to make sure that we can keep doing the job. Shannon, are you ready to go? Do you have slides to share? Ooh, I don't know if Shannon is with us right now or not. Give me just a moment, guys. This would actually be a good time if you guys need to take a restroom break or just grab a bite to eat or a drink. Go ahead and do that while we get set up. Okay, I think we've got Shannon now. Looks like there was a child emergency, which in this day and age, we should all be expecting that. Half the time I have to chase my dogs away when I'm presenting.
Okay, Bob, can you hear me?
Yes, you are coming in just fine. And thank you,
Okay.
Rachel, for getting those slides up there.
Yes.
Uh,
So good evening, everybody. My name is Shannon Shipman. I am the Health and Human Sciences and 4-H Youth Development Educator in beautiful Ohio County, which is about 35 miles west of Cincinnati, Ohio. And like I said, I apologize for the delay. I have a 5-year-old and a 10-month-old, and this is usually the time of night where all chaos happens. So for those of you with little ones, I'm sure you can all relate. But in regards for tonight's program, we're going to talk about communicating with farmers who may be under stress. This program is really near and dear to my heart because I grew up on a dairy farm where my parents were under a lot of stress because of milk prices. Back in the 1990s, we had a small herd. My dad had a PTO accident. So farm stress is not something that farm stress is something I'm very familiar with. And I'm excited to present to you tonight just some tips and tricks along with Rachel. And then our public health intern from the University of Indy, Jessica Coons, she's going to be sharing some resources with you as well. So looking forward to visiting. If you guys have any questions, please put anything in the chat. And Rachel and Jess are both watching that, so they can stop me or whatever, and we can discuss whatever's on your mind. So let's go ahead and get started. So during this time that we're going to visit tonight, we're going to explore what farm stress is, and it's a subject that's affecting the lives of many farmers throughout the United States and their families, not just their wives, but their children as well as grandparents and everything. So this program is going to look at several things in regards to how we're going to build awareness around potentially difficult, stressful conditions that affect our farmers in regards to prices, weather, things that are out of their control, and then things that are within their control as well. We're also going to learn about some stress triggers, identify some signs of stress, and review those helpful techniques for responding to those types of stress. We're also going to look for identifying ways that we can approach farmers who may not cope with stress effectively. So like some discussion points and just ways that we can show empathy in regards to the situation that they might be going through. And we're also going to learn about the signs of severe stress and the relationship that self-harm, as well as where if a farm family or a farmer is experiencing this kind of stress, where they can go for resources for help to make it through this difficult situation. So just a couple of questions, and you can go ahead and throw a yes or no up in the chat if you want to. But so just some questions. How many of you are lifelong multi-generational farmers? You want to just go ahead and type in the chat. You can say yes or no. Or
I know there are a few on here.
you on here? Okay, Bob. Okay. What about you? How many of you are maybe in the farming business because you absolutely love it? And then I'm trying to get to where I can see everyone. Okay. So a lot of times that's one of the biggest reasons why we farm is because we love it. It's not for the paycheck. It's not for the reason, it's not for any other reason other than the fact that we love the land, we love being stewards of the land, and we want to provide for those in our communities and around the world. Okay, so how many among you know of at least one farmer who's currently under some type of great stress because either the price commodity changes or because of a business deal or some medical related matter? I'm sure everybody's going to know somebody in this boat in one capacity or another. Okay, so Summer Long, okay. Thank you, Summer. Okay, so moving on from that, what we do know about farm stress is that basically looking at statistics from 2016, around 417 farmers and farm workers have died from work-related injuries, which equals out to a fatality rate of 21.4%, or 21.4 deaths per every 100,000 workers. The other thing that's getting to be kind of scary too, which is becoming a problem across our country, is the opioid epidemic and how it's becoming a huge issue in the rural areas because of the fact that 75% of farmers say they have easy access to those opioids. And another thing that's also a stressor to farmers is the inadequate presence of medical facilities in most rural communities. A lot of times, if they are farming, they're several miles from town, there's really no access. And if you live in a community like where I live in Ohio County, where we're the smallest county in the state, there's maybe 5,800 people live there total. Our closest hospital is 12 miles up the road. So, we don't have the facilities here, like most rural communities across Indiana, they don't have those facilities. And so that can be a huge stressor as well. And also, one of the other big stresses, and this was a huge stress in my farm family, I was actually the 5th generation of my family to milk dairy cattle until we sold our herd in 1990. And that agrarian imperative, it's where it impels our farmers to hang on to the land at all costs. No matter what, we hang on to the farm because we don't need that generation. It has to let go of the farm. We don't want to have that cloud hanging over us. The agrarian imperative instills that incredibly hardworking lifestyle, enduring the unusual pain and hardship that comes with farming. And it also, it kind of enforces them to take some uncommon risks that most people wouldn't take, whether it's, trying to finish filling silo at 10 o'clock at night or trying to be, baling hay on 4th of July before the rain comes in. So the land is everything to our farmers, and losing the farm is like the ultimate loss. It's the ultimate ego. It's just something that as farmers, and for a farm that's been a multi-generational farm, you don't want to have that hanging over the head as it you were the one that lost it. And so that can be a huge component of farm stress in that agrarian imperative. So moving on to some of the values that farmers possess. Normally, if we were in person, we would probably have a flip chart up and we would have a discussion, but why don't you guys go ahead and throw some values that farmers possess in the chat, and we'll go ahead and talk about some of those. So don't be shy, or if you want to unmute your mic and tell us one, we can go ahead and talk about that as well. Strong work ethic, absolutely. You have to have a strong work ethic and drive to be in the agriculture industry. Okay, what's another one? Family, yes. You have to value your family and the hard work that everybody puts in. And you also have to value the fact that maybe your family, for the next generation, maybe farming's not going to be for them. They want to go to college and do something completely different, or go to a trade school, or do something that's not farm related. So the family values are very important as well. What's some more? I know one of my family values were the fact that we valued the land, and we didn't want to lose our. When we started our own dairy farm back in when we started our own dairy farm back in the 90s, my dad walked away from a farm that had been in our family for 4 generations, that had 365 acres of land and was being crowded upon from the city of Cleveland and the suburbs moving out that way. And so valuing the land and the work that goes into that land, it's hard to let that go. Another value we have is tradition. Absolutely. The farming tradition, you're not going to find better people than the farmers that are in our country, and the family and the values that come with them, and just the traditions that come with them as well. You're not going to find a better group of people. So in moving from talking about some values, we're going to kind of talk a little bit now to some net farm income and net cash income things. So we all know farming has been, it's been rough. It's been personal too. I have several friends that are still very involved in the dairy industry, that because of deans and the contracts that they were not able to fulfill, having to sell their animals and dump milk, and losing herds that had been in families for 5, 6, 7 generations. So yeah, what's been going on in the ag industry right now has been really, really hard. And just the fact that with Corona coming, there was just a lot of different things that happened that kind of knocked the floor out from a place that wasn't very steady to begin with. And looking at the chart, you can basically see that the boom years for net cash for overall farm income was 2011 through 2013. Well, that's anywhere from 8 to 10 years ago. So obviously prices have taken kind of a downturn since then. Basically, they've declined by half since 2013, which whenever I think about this and I think about how milk prices, for example, go from being 18 bucks a hundredweight down to $10 a hundredweight, I always want to say to a consumer, like, okay, how would you like it if your paycheck was cut in half? Could you still make it today on 2021 prices and still provide for your family? And that kind of puts a different perspective on it. There has been a slight uptick in prices and cash flow since 2016, but we're kind of entering this plateau period. And once again, like I said, which is very sensitive to my heart, is that the dairy industry has been hit incredibly hard the last couple of years. So many dairy farms are selling out just because milk prices are awful and the cost of production is just so high these days. Moving on to, in 2019, in regards to all 50 states, in regards to net farm income, Indiana ranked 18th out of 50 for monies that were generated through farming and agriculture. So, I mean, we're kind of in the top half of the pack. Obviously, California's got a lot of diverse agriculture commodities that they work with, and so does Illinois. But we're right up there in the top half of income that has been earned since 2008 or since 2019. I'm sorry. As you can see from the graph that Rachel's just put up, net farm income in Indiana has declined by nearly $700 million, or by 24% since 2008. So that is a huge blow to our agriculture industry in regards to the amount of money that has unfortunately been lost due to all kinds of situations that are beyond our control, as well as farms that are selling and things like that. But when you look at the loss since 2013, in 2013, the net farm income reached about 5.5 billion. Indiana actually had a 61% decline, which is over $3.3 billion lost in just 4 years. So Indiana has suffered quite a bit in the farming community in regards to income that's been lost over the last 8 to 10 years based on these graphs and projections. So moving on to the next graph, Rachel, the dairy farming one, you can check that out. Yeah. Okay. So as we can see with dairy farming, you can see, and I'm not like you guys can see me, but I'm pointing to my graph while I'm in here. Anyway, dairy farming kind of peaked around like 2015, and then there was that sudden drop around 2016, and it really hasn't picked back up much since then. And so like I said, a lot of dairy farmers have chosen to sell. The small family farm is starting to become a thing of the past because of prices and the cost of production, as well as just other things that are out of control in regards to crop prices, in regards to fuel prices, labor issues, so many different aspects, as well as environmental things that they have to take into account to produce the milk that we drink. So, and as well as the alternative milks that are available as well, which are also having a huge impact on the dairy industry. So, and so is corn. Corn is also suffering because corn is suffering because of the consequences of high supply and low return. So we can see that corn's high reached its peak in 2012, and looking at the chart, at $7.63 a bushel. But it's only been able to break $4 a bushel since July 2019, and the highest it's gotten since July 2019 has been $4.16. So it's kind of, like I said, it's not just the dairy industry that's suffering, it's big time farmers as well, or row crop farmers as well that are hurting, especially if they're corn producing. Soybeans have taken a hit in regards to, in August of 2012, they were selling for $16.20 a bushel, which is huge. And now they've been steadily below $10 per bushel since basically early 2015. They really have never rebounded to that huge component of that $16.20 per bushel that we saw back in 2012, which was crazy. I remember when that happened, and the grain elevator where I live by was packed nonstop with trucks just unloading and selling and all that. And it was just so impressive to see. And now they're just not getting that impact again in prices. Wheat has also taken a hit in regards to having the highest price of $8.47 per bushel back in 2012. And they haven't been able to hit over $5.50 since April of 2015. So, think about where our country was at that time. Gas was still really high and expensive, and trying to produce these crops. I mean, you go from having this great price down to losing this price, but you're still expected to meet the costs and demands of what those prices were when the prices were good. It's very hard to balance that. Cattle farmers have been hit hard too, not just this year or in 2020, but previous years. Cattle prices reached a high in November 2014 at $1.67 a pound, and right now the average is now near about $1.20 a pound, and that's been since the middle of 2016. That number might be a little bit skewed based on coronavirus and that kind of and other economic aspects as well. And then pigs also peaked at 94 cents a pound in 2014, and they haven't been able to break 65 cents a pound since July of 2017. So as we can see, there's all these trends in regards to how much agriculture has taken hits in regards to the high prices we enjoyed in the early 20 teens to where we're at now in 2021. Everything right now is also stemming from COVID, or the coronavirus pandemic, and its effects are being felt in every commodity in regards to agriculture. As you guys can see on the graph from Farm Bureau Federation, that buying habits of consumers have definitely slowed down, and that's because loss of jobs, loss of income, all of those traits that have played a part in it. And we've already seen a definite demand or drop in demand in regards to food service. Our restaurants are not producing the meals and stuff that they were back when businesses were booming. And so supply has gone down, the need has gone down, but the supply has kind of stayed the same. We also lost a lot with the schools being on e-learning to where they weren't purchasing food for kids and those commodities as well. But there's also some unofficial estimates that in regards to current market price of milk is actually down 40% compared to where it was in January of 2020. So just another aspect of how Corona has affected everybody. People are driving less. So the demand for ethanol is down in regards to gas, or in regards to fuel that's produced from corn, and has increased. Ethanol plants are idling. Corn prices are definitely down, and livestock producers who relied on those distillers' grains from the ethanol are scrambling to replace that source with animal feed. So it's just a vicious cycle that just keeps going and going, and it's like getting on a merry-go-round, and there's no way to get off of it just because everything impacts everybody. And in regards to agriculture futures, many farmers and ranchers look to lock in better prices for later on, as well as down the road, and that shows concerns that consumers will buy less in the coming weeks and months as the economy is slowing and our employment continues to worsen. So, there's all these things that are happening, and obviously all of these things are out of a farmer's control, but can cause a huge amount of stress on a farm family and their livelihood, as well as their work ethic. A lot of things can happen from it. As you can see on the chart that Rachel's just put up, the total household income and portion of a household income from farming both vary by commodity. So as you can see, the median dairy, as I'm once again pointing to my own screen, not so you guys can see it, but anyway, a dairy farm, their median household income from farming is right around 30, right between 30,000 and 50,000, when the actual median total household income is right around 70. And I have a hard time, growing up on a dairy farm when milk prices hit $10 a hundredweight, there were times that, not all the bills got paid. and a health insurance had to be dropped and things like that. And that's another stressor that families are facing these days too, because of the different changes in prices and income commodities, how it results in income. Things like health insurance are being dropped, which then results in families not taking care of themselves and going to those doctors and dentists and eye appointments like they need to maintain good health. And like I said, it's just this vicious merry-go-round that just keeps going around and around in regards to how prices affect the livelihood of our farmers. So it's not only just the prices that affect our farmers, but it's also weather-related losses. The past few years, we've had some really bad natural disasters. We've had hurricanes, we've had tornadoes, we've had floods, we've had hail, we've had fires, numerous things that can have a huge impact on the crops that are grown, around the country, depending on what region you're in. In Indiana, it's crazy to think that like where I live can get 1.5 inches of rain and 2 miles up the road gets nothing. It's so sporadic, and sometimes that's so frustrating because, a farmer can have a great looking field of corn that looks great in June, and by the end of July with the heat, they haven't gotten the rain and that corn's not looking so good. So it just kind of just depends on whether, and that's something that's completely out of our control as well. So the hard thing with all of this is like we said, this is like a merry-go-round or a cycle that just doesn't want to stop. Prices are going to continue to exist, and many ag markets are considered bearish, which means they're in a decline, or between when you have the like the stock market, whatever, you have a bull market, which is a fast-moving, high-paced, high-energy market that lots of spending is happening. And then you have the bear market where it's kind of slow and that's like kind of in hibernation. And right now, agricultural markets are in that bearish hibernation period. And it looks like it's going to continue that way into the near future. Many farms are actually struggling to cover their cash flow just to pay the basic bills, to keep electricity on, to keep food on the table, to hopefully provide health insurance for their families. And year after year, when your earned net worth is negative, it's been negative in multiple sectors of the ag industry. So there's a lot of farmers. It's not just one industry that's been hit. It's a myriad of them that have all been impacted. And a lot of these farms are in financial distress. They're pulling farm families under prolonged stress, which is causing a lot of mental health issues, as well as the physical health issues. And when we don't take care of those physical and mental health issues, kind of steamroll and snowball from there, and more issues arise from that. So in looking at how to identify and manage stress in ourselves and others, when we look and see the stress in ourselves, we want to look and see like what our response is to it, how we respond to it, and then how others respond to it as well. So as we go through this next section, Rachel and Jess have some information and activities in as well. I'm going to be chiming in as well to go over with you guys in regards to the management of stress and how we help ourselves, as well as the definition of stress, which is actually the need or demand that people confront that's perceived as anything that's burdensome or threatening that can lead to a lot of physical and mental health problems. So stress has a really broad definition, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of open it up now for Rachel and Jess to kind of join us in regards, and all of you as well. Let's go ahead and put some things in the chat or unmute yourselves, and let's kind of talk about what causes stress among farmers. And I'll go ahead and start. I know one thing, it's definitely the weather. If you have a wet spring, you're late getting those crops in. If it keeps raining and you don't get the sun you need, those crops don't grow accordingly. So the weather, which is something completely out of our hands, but yet it's one of the biggest stressors that farmers face. So what are some more stressors? Bills, yeah, having to make our monthly bills, whether it's buying seed, whether it's the fixing equipment, any one of those things. Making the monthly bills is a hard thing to do when your prices are not good. Anyone else? Okay, so in looking at what some stressors are for farmers, you've got obviously large debt loads. When the prices were good, we maybe bought some more land, and now we're still owing on that land and prices aren't as good. We've also got government regulations, EPA compliance rules, just a lot of government things that we need to abide by. The cost of equipment and maintaining equipment is expensive, as well as, just buying new equipment is also expensive too. And if it's been a bad season, and all of those things can have a huge impact, as well as the high interest rates that we're seeing, or higher interest rates that we're seeing now, as well as, different crop yields when we don't have a good growing year, illness in our cattle. I will never forget the summer of 1994 when BVD rolled through a lot of dairy herds in Northeast Ohio and Western Pennsylvania, and a lot of people had to call their dairy herds because of the bovine viral diarrhea. And, that really, really shook our local economy quite bad, because a lot of farms went out of business. Commodity prices, as always, are going to be a huge stressor. And then, the family farm can be great, but sometimes there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And so when we have disagreements with family members, that can cause another round of stress too, because one family member might want to try to do something this way and be innovative. The other family member wants to stick the way that it's been done because it's worked for this many years. And that can cause strife, and that can cause a really uncomfortable situation in the family. And especially that puts a burden on maybe the parents that are still owning the farm and watching their kids fight. So anytime you have a family farm, it's a great experience, but there's also going to be a time too where not everything's always going to be perfect and everybody's going to get along. Okay, Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you for stress in our bodies. Does anybody have any questions? This is a quiet group. I know it's virtual, but project at any time. Okay, Rachel, I'm going to go and turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Shannon. I mean, everything you've said, farmer or not, you can feel the stress from all of these things that you can control or not control. And stress, it does a lot to our bodies. It's not just something we talk about, but it's something that can be felt as well. I have here a really great video I want to share. Hopefully it works. We'll see here. Can you all see this? Can you see my screen with the video?
Right now, what I've got on mine is it doesn't look like we have a video. I've just got kind of a white screen in front of me.
Okay. See, you learned something new. Technical difficulties, I'm telling you what. Let me see here. All right. Okay, what about now?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
you've got your web browser shared, and I see the TED Talk.
Cramming for a test? Trying to get more done than you have time to do? Stress is a feeling we all experience when we are challenged or overwhelmed. But more than just an emotion, stress is a hardwired
Rachel, I think we just lost sound of the video.
stress response. Not only changes your
Can you hear
brain,
it?
but also damages
Yeah.
many of the other organs and cells throughout your body. Your adrenal gland releases the stress hormones cortisol, epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine. As these hormones travel through your bloodstream, they easily reach your blood vessels and heart. Adrenaline causes your heart to beat faster and raises blood pressure, over time causing hypertension. Cortisol can also cause the endothelium, or inner lining of blood vessels, to not function normally. Scientists now know that this is an early step in triggering the process of atherosclerosis, or cholesterol plaque buildup in your arteries. Together, these changes increase your chances of a heart attack or stroke. When your brain senses stress, it activates your autonomic nervous system. Through this network of nerve connections, your big brain communicates stress to your enteric or intestinal nervous system. Besides causing butterflies in your stomach, this brain-gut connection can disturb the natural rhythmic contractions that move food through your gut, leading to irritable bowel syndrome, and can increase your gut's sensitivity to acid, making you more likely to feel heartburn. Via the gut's nervous system, stress can also change the composition and function of your gut bacteria, which may affect your digestive and overall health. Speaking of digestion, does chronic stress affect your waistline? Well, yes. Cortisol can increase your appetite. It tells your body to replenish your energy stores with dense foods and carbs, causing you to crave comfort foods. High levels of cortisol can also cause you to put on those extra calories as a visceral or deep belly fat. This type of fat doesn't just make it harder to button your pants. It is an organ that actively releases hormones and immune system chemicals called cytokines that can increase your risk of developing chronic diseases such as heart disease and insulin resistance. Meanwhile, stress hormones affect immune cells in a variety of ways. Initially, they help prepare to fight invaders and heal after injury. But chronic stress can dampen the function of some immune cells, make you more susceptible to infections, and slow the rate you heal. Want to live a long life? You may have to curb your chronic stress. That's because it has even been associated with shortened telomeres, the shoelace tip ends of chromosomes that measure a cell's age. Telomeres cap chromosomes to allow DNA to get copied every time a cell divides without damaging the cell's genetic code. And they shorten with each cell division. When telomeres become too short, a cell can no longer divide, and it dies. As if all that weren't enough, chronic stress has even more ways it can sabotage your health, including acne, hair loss, sexual dysfunction, headaches, muscle tension, difficulty concentrating, fatigue, and irritability. So, what does all this mean for you? Your life will always be filled with stressful situations, but what matters to your brain and entire body is how you respond to that stress. If you can view those situations as challenges you can control and master, rather than as threats that are insurmountable, you will perform better in the short run and stay healthy in the long run.
All right. Let me get back on to the PowerPoint here. So as talked about stress, you know, a lot of people talk about stress. There's some stress that lasts for a short period of time called acute stress. And that type of stress is if you're in traffic, if you're getting ready for a test or something like that. And then they talk about chronic stress. And chronic is, it happens over a longer period of time. And that's when our body, as they talked about with cortisol, and we'll talk about that more in a second, that raises in your body and it can cause things like ulcers, heart disease, hypertension, or high blood pressure. And I think it's very important to talk about. I come from a very high stress family who also farms. And my father actually passed away from a heart attack, and he was 53 at the time. So this stress and its impacts on the body is something that I find very important because we only get one body and it's important to take care of it. So there are many ways that it's not stressing out is easier said than done. And I'm aware of that, as I'm sure you all are too. But it's good to have that reminder of, yes, it happens, but these are some things that we can do in the meantime. And I believe, Jessica, you have some information. I'm not sure how to get you to share your screen. I'm not sure, Bob, if you could help me there, hand the torch over to Jessica for a moment.
Okay, Jessica should be getting presenter privileges now.
Just so I'm doing it right, I just need to click share content, correct?
Yeah, so just click share content. You should see a selection of things you can share and then just hit the one you want to put up.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. I'm kind of new to WebEx, so
It's okay. It's okay. I want to use Zoom, but our Zoom account is being used by our other educator right now, so we're just making do with what we got.
all right. So my information that I have on stress is kind of to tell you guys how to deal with it. Basically, this is a handout that if we were in person, we would have given you to look through. But today we'll go over it this way and it'll be the same. So one thing you can do is kind of reflect. So you'll think if you're in a very stressful moment, you can think of a time maybe when you weren't in that stressful moment. And you can, if you close your eyes and you try to relive that non-stressful moment, that moment where maybe you were on vacation or you were with family and you didn't really have the stress from the everyday things that you're dealing with. If you do that reflecting, that's one way that you can try to escape the stress just for a bit so that you can lower your cortisol levels. Another thing to do is this think method that is like the acronym BRAIN. So breathing is a really good way to relieve stress. Sometimes that kind of sounds silly, but it's a form of meditation. So if you can just take a moment, if you feel yourself kind of maybe panicking a little bit about something that's going on, if you're trying to get ready for something that's a stressful event, if you just take a couple minutes to just breathe and listen to your breath, sometimes that helps you just kind of come back to reality and maybe realize that the thing you were stressing about wasn't as big of a deal as maybe you thought originally. And then relaxing, if you can find something that relaxes you, whether that's exercising or meditating or doing something with your friends or family, that's a really good way to kind of reduce cortisol levels and make sure that you are taking some time for yourself. And then asking yourself what you need and what you want is a really good thing as well. So we're really concerned all the time, and a lot of people are people pleasers if you're like me, where you want to help others all the time, but sometimes you have to ask yourself what you need too. So make sure that you take some time to reflect and do the self-care, even if that's just taking a walk, just a little time for yourself can really help. And then imagining feeling the way that you want to feeling stressed, maybe imagine that you feel something different. Everyone's different, so some of these techniques might work for you and some of them might not, but the key is to find something that helps you feel better and less stressed. So after doing those things, you're going to ask yourself, how do I feel now? So if you go through, if you do them in order, if you feel better, then that's something you can be like, okay, next time I'm going to do the same thing and do that, talk yourself through this exercise. Another thing is self-talk. So a lot of people have very negative self-talk, especially if you're worried about what's going on in your family, if you're worried about what's going on in your farm or just in your day-to-day life. Maybe you're hard on yourself, probably harder on yourself than you would be on other people. So if you can be kind to yourself and give yourself some positivity, that can help you through some difficult situations as well. And we talked about exercise a little bit as far as reducing cortisol levels, but physical activity really can help you to not feel as stressed, especially if you had a stressful situation and you're trying to calm down and relieve that stress. Sometimes, like I said, going for a walk, going for a run, doing something to be physically active can really help you and maybe help you enjoy life a little bit more too. So I believe, Shannon, do you want me to go ahead and go into youth farm stress, or do you want me to wait for that one?
You know what, Jess, let's go ahead and wait a little bit after Rachel talks a little bit more, and then we'll get into that one if we have some time to continue.
Okay, perfect. Would you like the survey to go up? So
please.
I'm going to go ahead and put a survey into the chat. This is really fast. All you have to do is click on what you feel about stress. So it'll walk you through. There's only 3 questions, and then you'll just select the ones that you feel when you feel stressed out. And I will stop sharing my screen.
All right, as you all take that, I'm going to go over some more stress, some more talks about stress. So, what does stress look like? It looks different for everyone. Some people like to talk about it, some people don't. And whichever way people talk about stress or manage stress, that's the way that they do it. It can manifest itself in different ways, like we talked about heart disease, ulcers. Again, something that I've personally felt with family. Granted, whether or not stress was exactly the cause of that, I don't know. Like many things, there's also diet and exercise that go into certain health events. So, but as Jessica mentioned too, those are some ways that stress can be relieved as well. Stress, like I said, it's a whole body thing. It's your mind, it's your body, it's your actions. And the way that we handle stress, we can recognize it in ourselves in a few different ways. The video said that sometimes people get headaches, maybe they get acne, they gain some weight, they lose weight. Again, it's tailored for everybody, but these are some things that we can recognize in ourselves or other people when it comes to stress. Physical signs, again, headaches, eating problems, maybe you're not able to sleep, getting sick a lot. I don't know how many times, if farm or not, you can probably relate this to anything. Like, let's say you have a job you're not thrilled about. It's amazing how when there's something you don't really want to do, you're all of a sudden sick to do it. So that's one way that the physical sign of stress can manifest itself. Emotional, you're acting out, you're bitter, you're sad, people withdraw from you because of the way you're acting. And maybe instead of asking what's going on, they can just tell by those emotional signs of stress. And behavioral as well, getting mad easy, acting out, being passive aggressive, self-medicating, like taking drugs or using alcohol. That's also a way that some people cope with stress. Another thing too is your memory loss. You can't concentrate. I know for me, that's a big sign of stress, is that lack of concentration and forgetfulness. I sometimes call it mom brain, but I think stress, it has a big hand in that as well. Another thing is just your self-worth. You're feeling like a failure. You don't think you're any good. You can't do anything right. Again, all signs of stress, and that can be managed. Jessica talked about some really great ways that stress can be managed, and it's easier said than done. Farmers especially, when is their time? That's the biggest thing when it comes to exercise, just taking care of your body is, well, I don't have time to do that. But what you don't realize is just walking around the farm, going out to feed the animals, that is a form of therapy. That is the form of stress relieving because you love it so much. You're doing the things that you really care about. And that because of this lovely hormone that is cortisol, which the video talked a little bit about. And it's something you can't see, it does a lot of damage to your body. In small amounts, it's completely fine. It helps us with that fight or flight response. So it kicks up in our body and we want to do something about it because it actually stops certain processes in our body, and it alters, if too much of it is in our body, it can alter processes, like it suppresses your immune system, it causes digestive issues. So it's something that in moderation is okay, but too much of anything is not always a good thing. And cortisol is one of those things that can fit into that category. And there is a demonstration, because you might be wondering, well, why am I looking at two jars on my screen? The reason being, the jar that's clear, that is representing you're thinking clearly, you're able to function as you should. And then to the right, you have that cloudy jar full of mud, and that is too much cortisol in your body. So you shake that up, you can't see through it. You're just not thinking straight. It's not working the way it should. So keep that in mind, keep that visual in your mind. If you're too stressed, you don't want to be a jar of muddy water. You want to be the jar of clear water so you can think and act clearly. Symptoms of that prolonged stress, you're changing your routine. You're not yourself. Your care for your animals decline. And people can see that. They can notice those outside things like, oh my gosh, so-and-so, they used to take such great care of their animals and great care of their lawn. And now it's like, when's the last time they mowed their lawn? They don't have pride in their stuff. So that is a sign of that chronic stress. And you can even see that in yourself too. You might look back on pictures and say, my gosh, my farm was so beautiful. And look at my animals, they were taken care of so well. It could be a reminder of maybe I am dealing with something that I need to address. Increased illness, again, like I mentioned, you feel sick more often. You just don't, you all of a sudden have a stomach ache whenever you want to do something or you should be doing something. Increased farm accident, and that goes right back to not thinking clearly. You're not as careful. So those farm accidents can happen. And again, stress, sign of that is lack of sleep, or in some cases too much sleep, but a lot of times you're up thinking and you're not sleeping enough, and that can result in accidents as well. Children show signs of stress too, because whether or not we realize it, children are sponges and they pick up what parents are having in front of them. So if you're stressed out, children seem more stressed out. They know something's going on and they react on that as well. Jessica had some really great points on handling stress. Again, don't think of it as this fluffy, I have to go get my yoga mat out and meditate and post it on Instagram. It's not like that. It's taking a minute. If you have an extra minute, you're sitting in your tractor or you're sitting in your car and just deep breathing, letting it go, whatever is bugging you, just think in that moment, I don't have to be there and I can take a minute for myself and reset my body. Talking yourself up, because like a few slides ago was talking about, a sign of stress is making yourself feel like a failure. You're not doing anything right. But talking yourself up or just giving yourself that positive self-talk of, okay, this event is stressful, but I can deal with it. If the crops aren't looking good this year, that's okay. There's next year, and I have a plan B, C, and D that I can go through, and this can get resolved. This is not the end of the world. Exercise. My background is exercise science, so I am a big fan of exercise. Actually, I'm a personal trainer too, so I love to emphasize the importance of exercise, not just for a clear mind, but a stronger body as well, one that's going to keep you going the way that you should. So again, it not to be fluffy, or you don't have to go to the gym and spend 3 hours there. You can walk around your farm, do something you like to do, play with your kids, if you have a dog, play with your dog. That's a form of exercise. Gardening, that's a form of exercise too. Being connected with people. So sorry, I hear my little one in the background. Connecting with people is extra important to help with stress. And COVID is really putting a damper on that. A lot of people have reported more stress, depression, because they can't connect with their family and their friends. But thankfully, there is social media, and it's all you can do is just get your phone, text your friend, message your friend, say, I'm thinking about you, or what's going on, start that conversation, and knowing who you can go to if you have a stress in your life. That support is everything. If you're having a bad day, or bad days, bad weeks, it's good to have that person you know that you can count on that can really help. And mental health professionals, they're here for that reason. They want to help people. They're not a neon sign above their door saying, oh, so-and-so came to see me today. It's not like that. And there shouldn't be that stigma attached to it. They're there to help, and hopefully breaking that stigma can really help more people to connect with them and get the resources that they need to be in the best mentally healthy place in their life that they can be. Back to that, identifying social support systems. There's a lot of studies out there, and I hate to do this, but I am going to read off the slide here. So there's a sample of 190 farmers and ranchers, and the lower levels of social support resulted in higher depression scores. So that particular study, that's very common among a lot of different groups. Not having that social support is an indicator that you don't have someone to bounce ideas off of, you don't have someone to confide in, and that can cause greater chances of depression. Organizing those social support opportunities, so social events, which again, that's kind of limited right now, but that's not to say that the phone, you can't call someone up and just reach out, see how they're doing. Coffee talks. In the beginning of the pandemic, actually a few friends of mine, every Saturday morning, we would get our kids together, get our coffee, and catch up. And that was really helpful. I know technology can kind of be a barrier sometimes with especially rural communities because internet's not always great out here. But again, there's other ways around that. Even if there's a park or something where you can socially distance, something like that can be helpful as well. And again, to breaking down that stigma related to mental illness. Not everybody is happy all the time, and that is just a fact of life. And even the happiest person will have their days. It's all how you manage those stressful times, which is why understanding that everyone experiences this and that there's tools available is so important to do. So working with farmers who have a lot of stress, and Shannon talked about a lot of reasons why farmers are stressed out. A big one is that financial factor, because we all need money to live, to support ourselves, support our families, and with that uncertainty comes stress. So farmers, they experience a lot of that because it's not like they're going to get the set amount of money every year. They know what they hope for, what they need to have in order to operate, but that's not always guaranteed. So having that in mind and knowing that, yes, these group of individuals, they experience a lot of stress is very important. And it's all about in how you approach those people as well. And some people find it that they can pick up that somebody's stressed out, but they don't know what to say, so they avoid them and they don't want anything to do with them. And that's not always the best way to approach that situation. But being prepared is, because, like I said, people are going to be stressed out. So if you're around somebody who, let's say, you know that they're having a rough time, maybe they had a really rough year on the farm, or they lost somebody really important to them, so that's a source of stress. Being prepared for that discussion that you have with them, and listening. Listening is very important. It's easy for people to want to talk about themselves, but when you're around somebody who is experiencing stress, be that active listener. Let them vent to you. Let them talk about their problems, and realize you're not going to solve their problems. And they have to be in control of that to some degree. But if you're there to listen, that can make all the difference to them. They just need that shoulder to lean on and that ear that they can tell some of their problems to. But also having that action plan, if you need it for them, is important. So letting them know, hey, well, have you heard about XYZ that you could participate in? Or did you know that so-and-so offers support groups for this or that? Being there with some action plans for that person, that maybe that's what they needed to hear. They needed to hear it from you, that this option is available for them to get the help that they need. Thinking and planning ahead. It's important to ask yourself some of these questions. So, why are you going? Who's meeting? What might you encounter? And what can you help them with? So these are questions to ask when approaching somebody who is under some chronic stress. And not only thinking ahead of what you're going to say, where you're going to say it, who might also be there, who might be listening in, but how this person likes to be approached. So if they're not a huggy-feely person and you go in for a hug, that might not be the best approach for that particular person. So reading the room too, you have to know if this person is really not ready for you to talk to them. That's okay. Maybe go back another day. But keeping all of this in mind, and that's going to help you help them get what they need out of it. One thing I really do want to point out before I move on to the next slide too is your value for them and goal setting. Goals are so important for a lot of different reasons. And if you can work with this individual to set up some short and long-term goals, and you might have heard the acronym SMART goals before, and that comes into play here too. So, and I'm sure I'm going to forget one of them. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time specific. There you go. It's always the R that gets me. So not just saying, all right, well, your goal is going to be by tomorrow, you're going to have no stress at all. That's not really practical. That's not going to happen. So a small thing of, all right, you're stressed out about your tractor not working. Well, tomorrow, what you can do is go to the phone book, go to the internet, do some searches, and come up with some people in your area locally that can fix your tractor. So that's just an example. So having those goals, helping that person with those goals could make a lot of difference in their life. Set as well. And I thought there was a video on this, but I'm thinking of a different presentation. But you have to remind yourself, are you empathetic for them? Don't feel pity for them. They don't need your sympathy. They need your empathy. And there is a difference. And realize you don't have all the answers. It might be easy. I'm sure we've all had friends who have had their share of maybe relationship issues, and they come to you for advice, and you try to help them, and then they go right back to doing what they were doing before. And then you get frustrated. You're like, I told you not to do that. This situation is kind of similar. You don't have all the answers for them. They're not looking necessarily for those answers either. But how are you going to respond? What response would you have in that situation? And keep that in mind. Can you help them think or discover their lives and some possibilities that are out there? So problem solving with them and asking them, well, what decisions need to be made and how are you going to make it? And we talked about stress, how that can make your mind a little cloudy. So helping them think clearer too is important in this situation.
Rachel, just to add something in regards to empathy, one of the things that you can do is like, if they're talking to you, like, and have that active listening, but like at the same time, like, don't say, I know exactly how you feel. I know exactly what you're going through. Because in reality, you really don't, there's so many situations that may be similar, but what they're feeling could be completely polar opposite of how you felt or reacted to something. So it's really just important just to listen to them versus trying to, make them understand that you know how they feel. It's just about the listening to them.
Yes, exactly. So how you listen, and on this next slide, excuse me, we're going to go into that a little bit more. There is a video, and I'm not entirely sure how to get to it. And I know time running a little short on time, so I won't get into that right now. But open and honest dialogue. So making sure when you're talking with them, you're preserving the relationship. Tell the facts. When you're talking about that, listen to them and maybe repeat those facts back to them. So you're telling me this is what you're feeling. All right. Now, then the second part is to create that safety, that listening to them, letting them talk about what's going on in their lives, what their stress is, and then developing that shared purpose or resolving. So again, resolving is not necessarily what's happening here, but getting that plan of action. And these skills, it's not going to come naturally every single time. It does take practice, but this dialogue is very important, especially when dealing with the stress of your own stress, the stress of those around you. It's good to keep that in mind. Continuum. So all of these are puzzle pieces of this continuum. And I'm not sure from this if you can tell the order that they go in. I would ask what order you think they go in, but for time's sake, I will give you the answer instead. So the first one is ask. So asking is often when a conversation starts. It's when somebody is invited to say something through a voice other communication mode. Then the next part of this continuum is the probe. So you're probing or guessing, which is a way to gently gather more information and help them understand, and help for someone to understand exactly what's going on. So probing, you're just collecting some more of that information so that you might be able to better help them. And maybe by probing, you're getting more of the story than they let on to begin with, because as mentioned, stress can cloud up that thinking and maybe they forget to give a detail. So when you probe, you're more likely to get that detail they may have forgotten. The next part is attending. So paying attention and noticing the signals, noticing what's going on. You're reading the room. You're picking up on those little things that are maybe you can hear, or those verbal or nonverbal cues, but you're paying attention. You're not looking at your phone or looking off into space. You're in the moment, you're listening and observing what's going on. And then the next part of that is to restate what you hear. So I mentioned that a little bit a few slides ago, but you're hearing them talk, and then to make sure you fully understand what they're saying, you restate it. So I think I hear this. Am I correct of saying that? I hear that you're stressed out that your tractor's not working. Am I understanding that correctly? And then by you restating that, that helps them, well, yes, or yes, that's exactly what my stress is. And then with restating comes paraphrasing. So again, they're going to give you a lot of information, shorten it down as you restate that. And you're using your own words to do that. And that goes with summarizing as well. So you're paraphrasing, you're summarizing, you're condensing all of that information. And then you're going to reframe it. So reframing is to state in a neutral or unbiased terms what one thinks the speaker really wants. So based on what that person's telling you, you're going to reframe that. So you're telling me you want your tractor fixed, or you want a new tractor, something like that. Again, very bad example, but you get what I'm saying. So that is the active listening continuum. Any questions on that? Anything I've talked about to this point? Because I know I've gone through it kind of quick, but this is all really important, especially when talking to people who are stressed out, or keeping in mind when you're stressed out and maybe how you want people to talk to you or how you want to problem solve. So these are some ways that you can think it through. So phrases that you might use in active listening, some examples of that is, I can see that your current situation is hard for you. What changes would you like to see? You're acknowledging that there's something going on there, and you're asking them, well, in your perfect world, or if things were going the way you wanted them to go, what exactly would that look like? Another example, I'm eager to help you. I know you're going through some tough challenges. Tell me what I can do to help. And a lot of times people, if they're coming to you, they want to help. So if you're the person stressed out, and my family, they're so bad at this, when you say, okay, I know something's wrong, what can I do to help? They like to play the martyrs of, oh, no, I'm okay. And that's not necessarily the most helpful. And people there around, it's not helpful for them either, because they don't want to see someone they care about in a lot of stress. So letting someone know I'm here to help, and if you are the stressed out person, letting people help. I know after my dad passed away, for example, my mom did not want people to help, and then finally she broke down and, okay, I do need help. And that's a big source of pride for a lot of people, but they don't care about how they're proud of you. They want to see someone succeed, so they're going to help any way that they can. What are some ways you might respond to a farmer under stress? What are some examples, if you want to put that in the chat box? If not, think about this. So think about yourself in a situation with other farmers who you know are under stress, and play it out in your head how you would respond to that. What would you do if you saw somebody who was going through a really rough time? What would you do in that situation if you needed to approach them? So that's something, it's your homework. You can take that home with you there. Here's some things that you can do or say in that situation. I know other farmers who have experienced that too. That might be good for other people to know that they're not alone in feeling that way or having gone through that situation. Every situation's a little different, but help me understand it better, because as Shannon, I know, said earlier, not every situation is the same, and you don't know everything. But if you talk to them, you can get to understand it a little better and maybe see why they're so stressed, or help them see what, oh my gosh, you're so stressed about that. Well, did you know that there's this resource out there that can help you? Writing down some pros and cons. I know, as silly as it sounds, some very big decisions in my life had been solved from a pros and cons list, and they really do work. It is, again, as silly as it might sound, but having it down on paper and weighing that out, reading it, there's something about that can be really helpful. And maybe if you're dealing with somebody who's under stress, that might be what they need, is just somebody to sit them down and say, look, let's write a pros and cons list about it, and we can look at it from there. Stressful situations, again, everyone is going to experience them. Even the happiest of people are going to be stressed from time to time. Maybe that stress is short-lived, but it could go on for years and months and weeks and days, however long it can go on for a while. So recognizing that, being sensitive to other people and the information that they tell you will be really important, because if somebody who is stressed out and they're there and they tell you what's going on, you know what's going to stress them out even more is knowing that they confided in you and you told half of the county about it. So be respectful in that way, and really maybe put yourself in their shoes. If you're stressed out, what's the last thing you want? You don't want somebody to air out all your dirty laundry and let people know that you're having a bad time and why. Following up with that person too. It's one thing just to say, hey, are you okay? But it's another to actually go out of your way a few days later and say, okay, after our talk, how is everything going? Is there anything else I can do? So being able to follow up on that, again, very, very, very important. This is, again, I know I keep saying important, but this really is important. Don't promise something that you cannot individually do. So if somebody's stressed out and you promise them the sun and moon and stars, that's not wise, because if you cannot deliver that to them, you're not a very good resource, because they're getting their hopes up, and they're finding now that there's another level to their stress, which is somebody they thought could help them, turns out they can't help them. So do not overpromise something, especially to somebody who is already stressed out. And you can put yourself in your own shoes in that case. If you're stressed out, somebody tells you that, like, let's say you're behind on a mortgage payment, and somebody says, oh, I can give you that money. And then it comes down to it, and, oh, never mind, I thought I could, but I can't. Then that's just going to stress them out even more and add that extra layer of heartbreak to their already bad situation. So offer the things that you know you can deliver. If you can deliver them a number of somebody who can help them, then do that. But don't over deliver, and definitely don't give them false promises. So that's what you can do in your role. In your professional capacity, what are some realistic things that you might be able to do? And again, if you want to put stuff in the chat box, great. If not, this is another piece of homework for you. So think about that. When you're dealing with somebody who is stressed out, you might want to see their pain go away right then and there, and offer them something like I said, if maybe they need a couple $1,000s, and you say, oh, here, I have it right here. And you don't, hold back on that. So think about, well, what can I realistically do, and what's something I can do that's not going to stress me out in the process. So the money, for example, if somebody's stressed out about money, they need it, and maybe you do have a couple $1,000s in your bank account, in your savings account, but that's all you have. It's not realistic to then give all your money to that person. Yeah, it's going to make them happy, but now you're taking on their burden. Now you need some of that. So be realistic, and just a little bit at a time, or help them to get the resources that they need. That's not going to cause other people stress in the process. So some more do's. We talked about following up. They're talking about it again. Follow up, especially if you said you're going to do something, let them know that, yes, I did do it, or you asked me to go contact a couple people, and guess what? I did that, and I'm going to let you know what I found out. Even if you didn't say you were going to follow up, go ahead and follow up. If you gave them some information, come back in a few weeks or days and say, that handout I gave you, what did you think of that? That's just an example of some things that you can do that would help that person who's stressed out. Chronic stress and suicide. Now, this is unfortunate, but the reality with a lot of farmers and a lot of rural families, especially those who don't feel like they have that support system, or maybe they're having some stressful life events, but they're not able to communicate that with either someone they're close to, or maybe a mental health professional. Letting people know that, all right, this is a reality. This could happen. And unfortunately, I used to work in New York, and when I worked there, I worked for a public health department there. There was actually a string of unfortunate events. A lot of dairy farms were going under, and a lot of farmers were unfortunately dying by suicide, because that's what they saw as their way out. And understanding that chronic stress, it could lead to heart disease, but it can also lead to this idea that somebody is better off not being here. And it's important if you're dealing with somebody who is stressed out, to recognize those symptoms, those signs that people might be giving out, and knowing that it could potentially lead to this. It's not always the case, but it's there, and it's something that should be recognized and mentioned and acknowledged. Again, here's some homework for you, or just some things to think about. What are some warning signs of severe stress or self-harm or suicide that you might see or hear in your line of work? For farmers, especially, what's something that you could hear a farmer say that might be a red flag? And we'll go over those here in just a minute. Some of those signs are talking or writing about suicide or death, making a plan and acquiring the means to do it. So talking and writing about it, that's one red flag, but actually getting the stuff that could do that is another red flag. Feeling of hopelessness, you're trapped, you're a burden to everyone around you, you'd be better off not there. Hearing those phrases like that, that should be a ding ding. This person might be thinking these things. Giving away prized possessions. So ahead of time, they're thinking, all right, my son really loves this truck. I'm just going to give it to him now. Giving away something that person wouldn't give away because they felt a lot of pride in that. That could be another red flag. Saying goodbyes, loss of interest, mood change. We talked a little bit about giving up on your animals or the way your farm looks. That's another red flag too. So you're noticing that they're not taking pride in themselves or something that they took a lot of pride in. Those are some symptoms and signs to look for. Some examples of that. So these are statements, warning sign statements. And this one is very clear, this very first one. I'm going to kill myself. Don't think somebody's joking, especially if they're under a lot of stress by saying something like that. It's better to take it seriously than not, because if they're saying that, I don't know how many times I've heard people say there's a lot of truth in jokes at some point in time. And yeah, that person, maybe they're saying it in a joking manner, maybe not, but it's not worth it to take it as, oh, I just thought they were joking, especially somebody under a lot of stress. Coded to a friend. So if I should pass away, I need to have my old Winchester 22 gauge. That's something, that's another red flag. Or if they're talking to a banker, if you foreclose, you're going to see my obituary next week in the paper. So take that as it is, not a joke, but this person who's clearly stressed out is saying these things, and it's a small cry for help, or just that foreshadowing of what's to come. So intervene, talk about it with them, all those do's that we talked about a few slides ago, talking with them, seeing what the issue is, trying to come up with a solution for it, or getting them the help that they need. So some more warning signs. I won't go over all of these. I'll give you one example. A best friend to a pastor. And this one is very important too, so I'm glad I picked this one out. No warning signs at all. So maybe there is just that person was keeping all of that inside and they never gave any of those warning signs like, I'm going to kill myself, or you're going to see my obituary next week in the paper. But you knew that they were stressed out. They were going through a hard time in their life. And yeah, there was no outside warning signs, but it's good to check in and just see, how are you doing? I hear maybe there's something stressful going on. Is there anything you want to talk about? Leaving the floor open. Unfortunately, sometimes you can follow the book perfectly and it's not always going to have the best outcome, but knowing, being able to read between the lines or seeing that there might be some issues is important too. All right, so I think kind of wrap it up, Shannon. Okay, So if you have any questions on anything that we've talked about, please let us know. I'm going to hand it over to Shannon now. See what else she has to say.
All right, so if you look in the chat, Jess has put together some resources for Indiana in regards to suicide awareness and hotlines that your clientele can reach out to should that be a situation. As always, Purdue Extension also has a mental health first aid course that's available for both youth and adults that's currently being available right now via virtual learning. So you can always check out our website with Purdue Extension mental health first aid and just Google that. And if you guys have any questions on this topic, or if there's some more things that you would like to learn or go over with Rachel or myself in regards to farm stress, Bob has our contact information and we will be happy to visit with you guys over more of that. Tonight was a lot of information to take in, but we appreciate your guys' attention. And in the chat box, there is a link there for an evaluation tool for our farm stress team so that we can see how we're doing. So if you would just take the time to fill that out, it should be user-friendly for your cell phone or for your computer. So Bob, thanks so much for having us this evening. Hope you guys learned a couple of things. And like I said, if there's any questions about resources or anything like that, please go ahead and forward on our information and we'll be happy to assist any way that we can.